some serious concerns about the current budget and the fiscal road ahead for the city of Buffalo. While there was progress this year on boosting these structural revenues, something we've advocated for years and we didn't see up until now, those steps might be a little too late, as the city's in considerably worse financial shape than it was just a couple of years ago. In fact, those structural increases serve only to keep pace with rising expenses while doing nothing to close the budget gaps that led to a $35 million reserves being used last fiscal year and another $30+ million expected in the current year. And while the proposed budget for next year relies only $4 million in reserves from the capital side, the reason for that is just because there just aren't any reserves left that we can use to balance the budget. So what we've seen is a budget really where 10% of the revenues are very questionable. Some of these pie-in-the-sky revenues are similar to what we've seen in previous years, but this time the stakes are much higher because we don't have the reserves to bail the city out of reckless revenue estimates. For instance, I can't count how many times I've been here to talk about real estate sales in this chambers. So once again, real estate is relied upon for $8 million in revenue in this next fiscal year. We've only received $4 million in revenue in the past 5 years combined. So we've budgeted more than $30 million during that span for real estate sales. Last year we budgeted $8 million and received $1 million. We budgeted $7 million this year, and to date have received about $250,000. We ask the administration for a list of these properties every year. I'm sure the council does too. We never get it. We have no information to assume that these properties are going to come in. And we have rating agencies ask us about this all the time. I just don't think we're getting the true story on some of these. In December 12th, we sat here and talked about real estate sales. And WBFO reported on December 12th that Kevin Helfers, the city's commissioner of parking, said that the city's behind in real estate, but wouldn't so far say the city is down. Rather, he suggests those funds are simply delayed. Quote, "When you sell land, it's like selling your house. You get a closing date. Nobody ever closes on time," Helfer said. Quote, "It takes a month or 2 months later." That's exactly what's happening to us here. So that was 5 months after the fiscal year ended. Now we're 10 months after the fiscal year ended, and 2 months till this fiscal year ended, and we still haven't seen the $7 million that is supposed to be supposedly late and just delayed. So in addition to that list we never see of the properties that are out there that are supposedly sold, the 6,000 city-owned vacant lots are not even available on the website. So if you're a citizen out there looking to buy a vacant lot, the website says, "We're currently updating the list." Been saying that for several years. That property list should be available to citizens if we're really looking to real estate to generate some revenue for the city. So the other area of concern is casino revenue. Casino revenue is included to the tune of $17 million this next year in this budget. That's accounting for the $10 million that's owed from this year and half of last year, as well as the $7 million, that's due for the proposed budget. So if we didn't get anything this year and we only got half last year, what assurances do we have that next year we're going to get both the new revenue and the back payment? And who's to say when the state finishes their negotiations with the Seneca that those are the amounts that are still going to be allotted towards the city of Buffalo? Right now, the Seneca says they owe the state 0, and the state says, the city's portion would be 7. What if it's halfway in between when they come to the negotiating table? That means about half the revenue that we budgeted would not be coming to the city, and that's if we get anything. We don't have any information to show us that we should expect to see $17 million in casino revenue. Councilman Wyatt mentioned the traffic violation goes to $6 million in revenue. We're on pace to get about $3 million this year. I think we've gotten less than 3 with 8 months accounted for with traffic violations. So why are we expecting to have such an increase in that area? Speaking of traffic violations, now remember the delays and shortfalls, that when that was a new revenue source in the budget a few years ago. Will we see those same delays and shortfalls with the two new revenue sources in this budget, the charitable giving fund and the entertainment tax? Now remember, traffic violations, it was in the budget, but then we had to get the state legislation, and then we had to build the space on the first floor, then we had to hire the judges, and we had to take all these cases over, and it took longer to do all the setup to get to that portion, to get to that revenue, and then now we're seeing that revenue go down. So these other issues, the entertainment tax, now that's something, it's in the budget, but as far as I know, the details of that haven't been sorted out. We don't know what the fee's going to be. We don't know when the fees are going to start. We don't know how that revenue is going to come in and when it's going to come in. And to include in the budget without having all those ducks in a row, we think is dangerous. The charitable giving fund. Now, the people who would be taking advantage of this program are people that would be spending over $24,000 in state and local taxes. So, your average $100,000 house pays about $2,000, $2,500 in taxes. So you would expect someone, maybe if they pay $10,000 in property taxes, that's a $500,000 house. So there's not a lot of people out there that are going to take advantage of that, and they would have to pay another $10,000 in property taxes to take advantage of it. So there's not a lot of people that would really want to take advantage of that program. So that would put it even more burden on this charitable asking for business leaders. So, the details really aren't finalized on that either. And the thing to keep in mind is that, if they do give this charitable donation to the city, let's say it brings in $1 million, that's $1 million less in property taxes we're going to give, because we're waiving the property tax if they give to this charitable donation. So it's a zero-sum game in that aspect. So really the only new revenue on this line would be any charitable donations from the business community. So, when these revenues run short, we don't have the savings in expenses that we used to have. There used to be a lot of vacancies, and that gave a lot of savings to the city, but that was mitigated by two things. There's not as much savings we're expecting, but also we see that overtime has consistently been under budgeted every year, and from the numbers this coming budget, we think it's going to be under budgeted again. So if there's any savings in expenses, it's not going to be considerable, and it could actually be, with the increased overtime, there could be no savings. And when these revenues run short and we come up short in savings, we don't have the reserves to fill the holes. We're already having cash flow issues now because of our reserve position. And next year, we'll probably have to do short-term borrowing, RANs, TANs, these notes just to get us to pay the bills. In fact, that's included in the budget, the interest on those, because we just don't have the cash flow right now to make those payments. So where does that put us at the end of the day? The end of this next fiscal year could lead us to needing an additional $30 million in reserves if these if these revenues don't come in. And that could lead to a downgrade from the rating agencies. But the other thing to know, that if our operations aren't balanced by less than 1%, it could lead to the control board having the authority to revote to become hard again. So that's something no one in this chamber wants. People of Buffalo elected their leaders to administer their government, and the last thing we need is an unaccountable board of appointees running things in this building. So we just want to caution the city in this, and just emphasize that the stakes are very high in this, and we really need a serious budget with realistic revenues, or we could find ourselves in a financial crisis.